Hi everyone, welcome to Real Estate Victory. I'm your host Jason Appleton, and tonight I have several special guests that are going to help you with things related to buying or selling real estate, including John Barger, a loan officer with Summit Funding here in Cincinnati, Ohio, Cristen Appleton, a real estate agent with Keller Williams here in Northern Kentucky, and Matt Neary with Neary Inspections. We'll be right back after a quick break. Stick around. Welcome back. I have with me John Barger, loan officer with Summit Funding here in Cincinnati, Ohio. How are you, John?
Great, great. Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to see you. It's been a little while. You and I have known each other quite a few years, and it's very nice to have you. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
Well, Jason, I'm actually a mortgage banker. I'm not a broker. We're kind of a one-stop shop from VA to first-time home buyer, multifamily investments. We kind of, Summit Funded's going to be your one place to come where you can get any kind of loan product you want.
Well, one of the big things everybody wants to know is, what are interest rates right now? If I were to try and buy a house, what kind of interest rate am I going to expect to have?
Right now, interest rates are still historically low. And, last year they didn't come up that much. And all experts right now are predicting it'd be at least 5%, if not higher, by the end of the year. So with that being said, we really think there's going to be a lot of action come this year.
From what I understood, with VA loans in particular, it doesn't even really matter. What if I didn't have a credit score? Because can you still get something done?
Yes. There's a lot of changes. Like I said, the market is different. The industry is different. We used to be able to have 2 or 3 credit scores. I can actually do a loan with 1 credit score now. I know that there's agents out there and there's people that have applied for loans that's been turned down in the past. Maybe they didn't have enough credit, and they only had 1 score, 2 scores. We can now do a loan with 1 score.
Wow, that's pretty good. I've never heard anything like that before. Is that just a Summit specific thing, or is that pretty much everybody?
It's an agency guideline, and Summit fortunately is a direct agency bank. And so we have some tools and stuff we can do that a lot of the other banks cannot do.
And that's because you're not selling your loans.
Yep.
So you're not underwriting for 15 different investors that add overlays on top of the agency guidelines. You're basically closing a loan based off of whatever those guidelines are.
Exactly. If if the agency says we can do it, we can do it.
Now tell me, what are some of the big pitfalls that you see with home buyers, whether they're first-time home buyers, or, what are some of the things that you're constantly telling people, look, if you're trying to buy a home, these are things you definitely do not want to do, and then these are things that you really want to do?
Well, what I usually like to do is, if you want to buy a home 2 months down the road, you don't wait 2 months. Let's start now. Let's look. Everybody's got some kind of past credit history or this to go over. There might be a hurdle here. There might be a hurdle there. We start early, so when you want to buy and you're able to buy, all our ducks in a row, and we can execute your file and close your loan on time every time.
So basically what you're saying is if I'm looking to buy a home, this summer, I should probably call someone like yourself, get pre-approved, find out exactly, what do I need to do to get pre-approved? Do I need to clean up my credit score? Do I need to get judgments off my credit score or my credit history? Basically play cleanup so that come time when I'm ready to actually buy, I already have everything taken care of. I can push the button when I want to, as opposed to starting the process, but when ultimately it would be too late.
Exactly. A lot of borrowers make that mistake. I get a lot of deals that other agents give me that where they're 2 weeks from closing and it's a mess and we're not closing on time. And a lot of that can be avoided by just starting early. Let's look at everything, walk you through the whole process. What everything's going to be. You choose your rate, you choose which program you want to do, and that by that time that you go under contract, we know exactly what the time frame is going to be, and we execute and always close on time.
So tell me about some of the more, I know, based off of what I know about the mortgage business, different lenders typically have different restrictions based off of, whether or not they're a correspondent lender or they service their own loans. And, from what I understand, it's one of the reasons you're here is Summit basically services the vast majority of their loans as opposed to a lot of the other lenders in the market. So you're able to get things done that I know a lot of other lenders can't. Tell me some of the specific things that you're able to do that, say, another lender on the corner, the big box bank or whoever, what can you do that they can't?
Well, there's numerous things, and that all stems from a bank having overlays. When a bank, they sell these loans to multiple investors, they want multiple people to be able to buy these, so they put in place all these overlays. That's something that Summit don't really do to us. We don't have 400 pages of overlays. So, an example would be, many of you would want to buy a home, but you're like, hey, I'm getting ready to get the new job. I'm changing my job. Am I going to have to stay there 2 years? Well, that's a loan we can do here at Summit. One pay stub. If you're getting ready to make that transition to the next job and you're going from one job to the other and you're like, well, I want to buy and all that, I can actually close that loan. I just need your first pay stub. We don't have to have the 2-year job history of where you've been at that job for 2 years. So you could upgrade your home or even buy your first home.
What if you're self-employed?
Self-employed, we can actually do a 1-year self-employed, 1-year tax return. And we can do that loan, and a lot of other banks don't do that loan.
So let's say, I'm a real estate agent, and I'm dealing with somebody who's, my buyer is wanting to buy a home, and I'm a real estate agent. What sort of things would you let the real estate agent know, or what would you kind of coach the real estate agent on to help their client ensure that the loan closes?
Well, with me, with the agents, I'm really big on communication. So by the time the deal's over, me and the agent are pretty much friends. We know each other. Communication is big in anything, and that's always the number one thing I hear of what agents don't like about lenders. What lenders don't like about agents is communication. 90% of problems can be solved with communication. I can't tell you how many times, Jason, I've heard the stories of, well, I haven't talked to my loan officer in 2 weeks. I don't know what's going on. And then, nobody likes that feeling. Right. That's why, the mortgage industry and loan officers, they kind of get a bad rep to that because, if you haven't talked, you're buying a home and you don't know what's going on and you haven't talked to your loan officer in 2 weeks, you're probably nervous. You're probably scared. And, you have every right to be. So what I do is I'm big on communication, and I like to walk everybody through the step up front and give them a timeline, and we stick to that. So you always know what's going on with your loan. Your agent always knows what's going on with the loan.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about conventional versus FHA versus VA versus USDA. Just tell me, I want to buy a home. I want to know what my options are. Tell me, break down each of those different types of loan products a little bit.
Well, a lot of it depends on like USDA is a great home. You can actually buy a home with no down payment, and USDA just depends on the area you're going to be. That's a great loan. FHA is used a lot for people with first-time home buyers, lower credit scores, and they're only a 3.5% down payment. And we actually do conventional loans with only 5% down, 5 to 20%. A lot of banks want 20% down. We can actually do the conventional loan with 5% down. And then you have your jumbo program, which is, we also have a great jumbo program where we actually do one that's 5% down. A lot of people qualify for jumbo loans. Income-wise, they just don't have the 20, 30% to put down on those big loans.
Right.
And we have one now where it's 5% down.
Right.
And it makes the loan very affordable to people that can qualify for it. VA loans, Summit is a one-stop shop. We have every loan product available.
So let's say I call you and my credit score is a little low. Like, what can you do? Like, I really want to buy a house, but my credit score is a 450 or it's a 500. What can you do to help me get into a home?
Well, what I do is we'll go through your credit report line by line and look at everything and see some things we can target, try to pay down, pay off, this and that. We have some simulators we run your credit report through, and we all ultimately it comes down. So
you can tell me exactly what I need to do. Hey, if you do this, your score will go up this many points, and you can pretty much dictate
to a certain extent, yeah. And that all is based on what can you possibly do yourself, whether paying down this bill. Hey, we have this old collection, we have this. We're going to undispute this. There's multiple variables into doing that. And we usually get pretty close. And, if you're saying, hey, I can do that, John, I can do this, I can do this, we can estimate and it will simulate what your score would be close to at the end and where we would need to be able to get you approved to do a certain loan for a certain loan product.
Well, and I also know that it can take, 90 days? Like if you have something on your credit report, you want to get that removed, or if it's a collections or something like that, you pay it off. You always want to call and say, hey, I'll pay this off, but I need something in writing saying this could come off my score. But even when you do that, it could take anywhere from 30 to 90 days for that to come off your report. So you don't want to wait around too long.
Yeah, that's the whole point of if you want to buy a home in May, call me now. Mm-hmm. Let's look at these things now because there are things that we can take care of in 2 or 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. But there's also things that takes 2 or 3 months. Right. And there's the first thing I always do is have everybody look over the credit report. We go over it line by line because I believe 75%, it was an astonishing number of credit reports that have something wrong on them. Mm. You probably have something wrong on your credit report.
Great.
And if you haven't looked at it, if you haven't looked at it, you don't know. Right. So that's the first step. And, if you come to me and you say, John, all right, I got a purchase contract and we want to buy this house and we're already under a contract, and we start opening those doors and looking at those things, you haven't gave us much time to fix it, and whether it can be fixed or not, we don't know. So, just always be aware of your credit score, your report, and, just like anything else, it's like showing up early. Mm-hmm. Just let's get ahead of the game and let's look at your things now and get everything in line. And when that day comes, when you're ready to put that offer in, you know exactly the time frame, you know the process, and we will close on time.
Thanks to John Barger with Summit Funding. Feel free to give him a call at any time if you have any additional questions or comments, and we'll be right back after a quick break. And now my guest is Matt Neary, a home inspector with Neary Inspections. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing real well. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
For people that don't really know what a home inspector is, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, a home inspection is kind of like going to the doctor for a physical. We check the house basically top to bottom, from the roof all the way through the foundation. We look for any defects in construction or damaged items. From a lot of times it's from water damage or bugs. We always get the termite damage, and then we check all the mechanical systems in the house, from the furnace, hot water heater, all the plumbing, and it's pretty complete. We check for almost everything.
So I'm going to sell my house, okay, and I want to make sure I know, during a home process, buying or selling, anything can go wrong at any given moment.
Sure.
I understand that, a lot of times a home inspection can shut down a deal. So if I'm trying to sell my house and I call you up and I say, what can I do before I put my house on the market to make sure that, if I find a buyer and they hire you to inspect it, it passes with flying colors? What are some of the more common things that are easily done before I even list the house?
Well, first of all, I'd suggest that you get a home inspection for yourself even before you sell your house. A lot of times that'll ease the process. Like you said, when a buyer is going to get an inspection, they're going to have a home inspector come in and look. Well, maybe it's kind of getting a heads up. If you get your own inspection before you list your house, you'll know what to expect. You'll have a chance to fix everything that's found, and it eases the process a lot. Some of the common things that we find are dirty HVAC systems. So that's
What's
a good thing.
HVAC?
Oh, sorry, heating and air conditioning. Have your furnace and air conditioner serviced by an HVAC company, and they'll clean it and service it, check the Freon levels. That way, there's also a sticker on there that says it's been serviced. I recommend that people do that actually twice a year. Once in the spring before you turn on the air conditioning, and once in the fall before you turn on the heat. But definitely before you sell your house, you should have it serviced. And when you buy a new one, have it serviced as soon as you moved in, unless the seller already did it for you.
Okay. What other things do you typically run into that are just, quick fixes, things that, I mean, buyers can be fickle, so you don't want anything on an inspection list to come back negative, because you don't want to put the bad taste in a buyer's mouth. So what are some of the other things that you have seen a lot that are really easily fixed?
Leaky faucets. Check all the faucets to make sure they don't even drip. When you shut them off, they should stay off, not a constant drip. Check to make sure toilets don't keep running after you've flushed it. Check to make sure the toilet's actually fastened tightly to the floor, because a loose toilet can cause some serious problems down the road. There's a wax ring under the toilet that can get smashed down by a wiggly toilet.
Like if you're 7 foot, 300 pounds.
Right, yeah, like that. And after a while, it gets smashed down enough, and one time you're going to flush the toilet and water's just going to pour out the bottom, and that can really be a problem if you're on the second floor. You got drywall and finished areas down below that are going to get wet, so it could cause a lot of damage. A lot of times we find shingles that are missing on the roof, gutters that are clogged, downspouts that end too short, close to the foundation. A lot of times I'll find a downspout that ends, a foot or two off the ground, and it just pours right down onto the ground, and it'll dig a hole right there next to your foundation. And water getting next to a foundation is really bad. Water is the enemy of a house. So you need to take care of the roof and the gutters and the downspouts, get that water away to avoid a lot of damage.
If I'm going to pay for a home inspection, I mean, what can I expect to pay for a home inspection?
Well,
does it vary?
It varies quite a bit. I'd say the low end is probably around $300, and if you're looking at a big house that's going for $800,000, you're going to pay a lot more. So
basically, the bigger the house, the bigger the cost of the
exactly,
inspection.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then there's also radon testing that can add on to the cost of the inspection. Some companies do infrared cameras to check for heat loss, for insulation, and also can check for moisture. So there's a lot of options on home inspections that can be added on to the price. And also termite inspections are typically a little add-on. It's a smaller cost.
So one home inspector does all of that. Termites and water, and like I know that there was a situation recently where with the snow coming down, and I guess during a showing the property like got a crack or something, it was leaking. And I know that you were addressed with it, and like right away, you got to shovel the snow off of your roof, because it's freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing. It's getting under the shingles and it's falling down into your living room. So I was pretty impressed by that, just the fact that you were so on it.
Yeah, that's called ice damming.
Ice damming.
Yeah, when you get ice damming, it basically, like you said, it starts to melt, and water starts to get up under the shingles, and then it refreezes, and it opens up a gap a little bit, and it melts a little bit more and shoves more in there. And then after so long, there's nowhere for the water to go when it starts to melt. That's the ice dam. There's nowhere for water to go, so it's going to find the path of least resistance, which is right up underneath the shingles and
into your bowl of soup at your dining room table.
Down into your dining room light and onto the table and everything else. Yeah.
So, and a home inspector is not to be confused with or compared to a home appraiser.
Right.
There's a huge difference.
Totally
there.
different. Yeah.
You're more about the cracks in the wall, the cracked shingles, and just things wrong with the house, as opposed to a home appraiser who they're basically appraising the overall value of the house.
Right. And we don't do any of that. We don't touch the value of the house. I mean, people have asked me directly after a home inspection, so do you think it's worth such and such amount of dollars that we're paying for it? Well, I'm not an appraiser. I have no idea, because appraisers check for comparable houses in the neighborhood and a lot of different things that I just don't look at all.
Well, as you can see, Matt's been very helpful with a lot of information as it relates to home inspections. If you have any more questions for Matt, feel free to give him a call. The information will be right down there. We'll be right back after a quick break with Cristen, Appleton real estate agent with Keller Williams. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm your host, Jason Appleton, and you are watching Real Estate Victory. Now, my guest is Cristen Appleton. She's a real estate agent with Keller Williams here in Northern Kentucky. Thank you for joining us, Cristen.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about the market right now. What can I expect if I'm looking to either buy or sell a house? What's it look like?
Right now, there's a lot of buyers. People really want to get into that house for the next school year. They've got kids. They are looking for 4 or 5 bedrooms. There's certain areas that are a lot busier, a lot more desirable than other areas right now. But there's just not the inventory on the market. People will have a house that they really want. They'll have bullet points, specific features they're looking for, and the second a house comes on the market with all of those features, it flies right off. So inventory is what we're looking for right now.
Well, I know you just had a listing that you listed and had 8 showings scheduled in like 48 hours. Is that common?
It's not that typical. I did have a listing in Fort Mitchell that I listed last Tuesday, and I think now I've had 10 showings on it. And a lot of those were second showings for the buyers to look at the house again.
If I were looking to sell my house right now, what are some of the things that I should consider either before calling you or, how should I go about doing something like that with an agent?
So what I think is really important when someone goes to sell their house, or if they're even deciding or coming to that decision that they want to sell their house, is to first look at what their home offers. So if you have a 4-bedroom house, that's a traditional build, which is just a traditional 2-story house, and let's just say, hypothetically speaking, your price point is $250,000. Well, if you look at the current market, let's just say a 1/4 mile radius of your house, so all the houses that are on the market within that 1/4 mile, you want to look at how many bedrooms, are they a traditional style house, how similar are they to your home, what is the price point of those houses, and what does the inside finish look like? Does it have a finished basement? Does your house have a finished basement? Do the other homes have an upgraded kitchen? Does your home have an upgraded kitchen? If you have a price point of $250,000 and there's 10 other houses on the market and those houses have upgraded bathrooms and an upgraded kitchen, but yours doesn't, it's not so much that's going to affect the price, but it's going to affect the desire of someone wanting to move in. So they will much more likely buy the other houses that are much more move-in ready, up to date, than a house that's out of date in that same price point.
I see. So just because 10 houses in my neighborhood sold for $250,000 doesn't mean I'm going to get the same amount of money unless a lot of the details are comparable.
Yeah, and buyers are a lot smarter today. They all have the internet right there at their fingertips. They can look at these houses online. They can see, the different competition and what's out there, and they're going to make the decision based on the trends. I mean, right now, granite and hardwood floors and nice cabinetry and upgraded bathrooms, that's kind of the trend right now. Those are really big selling points in a home.
So, you're talking about the internet. I know it seems like a lot of real estate agents, well, I don't want to say a lot, but there are a number of real estate agents that I consider kind of old school. There are a lot of agents who've been doing this for 10 years. I mean, a lot of them are very referral based because they've been doing this for so long. But they don't seem to want to use the internet for anything. I mean, is there a reason why, if I'm wanting to list my house, is there a reason why why do I care about the internet? I mean, why wouldn't I just call somebody that I've known, in the business for a long time? What am I going to get out of going with what I would consider kind of a new school agent as opposed to an old school agent?
The majority of people today actually find their house online. Especially if you can find an internet site that links directly to the MLS, you're getting all the current and up-to-date information. So as soon as a house is hitting the market, if you're able to search a site that links to the MLS, you have it right away. And if you set yourself up on some sort of an alert, if you punch in bullet points that you're looking for a ranch with a finished basement, with a walkout, with 4 bedrooms and an acre lot. If you punch in all of those bullet points, as soon as that pops on the market, if it fits those criteria, it's going to send automatically to you, and you're going to get first dibs on that house. So internet's important.
So if I were to go to like realestatevictory.com and I punch in, what I'm looking for in a house, I'm going to get regular updates on what I'm trying to find when they're available.
If you want to set yourself up an alert, then yes, absolutely, you can do that.
Okay. So, the real estate business always seems to fluctuate and change so much. Is there any advice you could give someone who either is looking to buy a home? Let's start there. If I'm looking to buy a home right now, what's one of the first things that I should do?
One of the first things you should do if you're considering buying a home is probably talk with a lender. And I always suggest to talk to at least 2, sometimes 3, and just see who can offer you the best deal. Everybody's situation is a little bit different. Everybody's going to have different needs. And based on those, I like to present different options. People that I know are reputable and really going to take care of my clients. But then that way they can make the best decision for them and their situation. That way we can make the process as smooth as possible.
So, the buyer's going to contact a lender. They're going to get their pre-approval situation worked out. Then what? I've been pre-approved. Maybe I've spent the past 30 to 60 days getting my credit score up. I've been doing all these things to clean my credit up. What are we doing next?
So after you're pre-approved, I like to sit down with a buyer and do a buyer consultation. And that's where I really find out what they're looking for. Someone will say, oh, I want a 3-bedroom, I want a ranch, and I absolutely, no way, no how, I will never have a 2-story, and I don't want any land. But then when they find their house, it's the opposite of what they told me they didn't want. So then that's when I kind of say, okay, well, why is a 3-bedroom important to you? Do you have children now? Are you going to have children? Are schools important? What are your interests? What are things that you like to do? Someone might say, oh, I absolutely don't want a pool, but then they buy a house with a pool. So really getting to know your clients and their needs and what they're really looking for, not what they tell you they're looking for, makes a really big difference, because then you can help them really find that house that they want.
What makes you think that somebody, what causes somebody to say, well, I don't want a house with a pool, but then I'll buy a house with a pool? What do you think changes in their expectations or wants over that time?
I think when people start looking at different houses and you actually go into a property, they start to envision themselves in that house. They start to envision what their life is going to be like. And I think that kind of gives them a really realistic taste of their future and what they really want. And so in that, I think their decisions and their choices start to change a little bit when they first thought, oh, this is what I want, to what they actually end up buying. Do
you think some of that has to do with the finances of it? Well, based off of the houses I've seen, I know we can only afford this much, and so we don't want a house that's gonna, if we have 2 different houses, one has a pool, one doesn't, and we can afford the one without. Is it a financial thing to some people, or it's just?
No, I don't think so. And actually in Northern Kentucky, different markets are different, but in Northern Kentucky, a pool actually doesn't really affect the value of the house. It's kind of one of those hit or miss. It's a 50-50. Some people really love pools and they want a pool, and some people, it's the last thing. Yeah, it's the last thing they want. They don't want to deal with a pool. So, and I wouldn't actually say it is finances, because typically it's usually the other way around. People want more house than what they can afford. Sometimes the problem is, if someone's pre-approved for $200,000, but then they keep sending properties or emailing properties that are $235,000, $240,000, $250,000 that they want to look at. It's my job, that I believe, to set them up for success and to make sure they are in a house that they can afford. So that right house is out there for everybody. I don't try to push people into something that I genuinely don't think is going to be a good fit for them. I have had people before on the fence about a house, but I just touched my mic, but I felt deep down the better house, that there was another house out there for them, and I could tell if we just waited maybe a few more weeks, and every single time, lo and behold, that house always pops up.
Yeah.
And then they're always much more happy that they waited just a few more weeks, because it always comes around.
Well, that's actually kind of a good service if you think about it, because you're not trying to push people to buy a house just to get that deal done, just to get a commission check. I mean, that's pretty admirable. So you'll push people let's wait a little bit. Don't settle on this house that you're not 100% happy with. Let's see what else pops up.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah, I feel like once I get to know my clients and we develop a rapport and I would say a relationship, you know, I'm a hugger. A lot of my clients, by the second time we're meeting, you know, we greet each other with a hug goodbye, a hug hello, and I really kind of get a sense of what they're wanting. And by just knowing the market and having a feeling that I think their house is out there, and you know, when you know, when you see that house and it's the perfect fit, I mean, you can tell right away. Sometimes I can walk in a house and before they get there, I'm like, this is their house. And then they walk in and they love it. Right. So a lot of times I even know as well, but that perfect house, it always comes around. Right. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Cristen, for joining us. It's been a pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Real Estate Victory. I'm your host, Jason Appleton, and we'll see you again next time.